What's going on, JP Football Fanatics fans? It's your boy JP Football Fanatics himself, back with you once again with another type of video here for the off season that is going to be happening. This off season, we're in the off season right now. A little bit over a month away until the actual season starts. We have preseason that's coming up. We also have the regular season that will be coming up in about less than 2 months now at this point. Fantasy football coming up as well. So anything football related is coming up. So a lot of media people like to talk about some of the top teams that are going to be in the NFL this year. Obviously, everybody likes to talk about the Chiefs. Everybody likes to talk about the Bills as being the Super Bowl contenders, and which is all great and everything like that. Or even the Bengals are even going to be Super Bowl contenders as well. However, there are some underdog teams, some teams that could catch some of these teams by surprise. Some of these teams that really can come out and play their best football as possible based off of coaching, based off of players that they have that are flying under the radar a little bit. And one of those particular teams is what many people may disagree with me on, but it's the Las Vegas Raiders. Josh McDaniels at head coach, Jimmy Garoppolo as the new quarterback, the new face of the franchise in the 2023 NFL season, and so on and so forth with other star players from the Raiders. So, what do you guys think about the Raiders this year? Do you guys like them this year? Do you think they're an underdog? Do you think they're what some would say a very dangerous team? Let me know in the comments down below. Before we get started here, please be sure to drop a like on this video if you have not done so already. Also, be sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so that way you, as football fanatics, can be in detail of everything that I post on this during the NFL season, for the off season, and during the regular season as well. So let's get started. Let's talk about the Raiders. Okay. The Raiders are a team last year that were very underwhelming last year. A team that the year prior went to the playoffs, though they lost with Rich Bisaccia and Derek Carr at the helm. They lost their playoff game there, but they still had a pretty successful year. After that, Josh McDaniels gets hired in place of the interim coach of Rich Bisaccia. And let's just say some things probably didn't really work out in the Raiders' favor. So, as far as that kind of goes, a lot of the issues that really didn't pan out the way that many fans, or including myself, wanted to really think about with the Raiders is that the relationship between McDaniels and Derek Carr didn't exactly really work out the way that we were hoping for. This team was projected to win at least 9 to 10 games, so about above average record last year. Instead, they failed that miserably and dropped to like 6 wins only. So, a massive disappointment year last year, and especially when you get a all-star wide receiver of Devontae Adams in the trade in March of 2022, and someone that really wanted to play with Derek Carr and wanted this experience to play with Derek Carr at the professional level didn't exactly work out the way they wanted to. So during the offseason, we all know what happened there. Josh McDaniels benched Derek Carr the last 2 games of the season in place of Jarrett Stidham, who was a former Patriots quarterback for them. So while we never really got to see a lot of Stidham last year, there were a lot of upside with Stidham last year. However, he is not there this year. He got traded to the Denver Broncos during the offseason, or at least released. I can't remember exactly which way, but he signed with the Denver Broncos during the offseason. So that's one loss right there at quarterback that the Raiders do have. Instead, what they were able to do is they were able to pick up on Jimmy Garoppolo for a contract deal during the offseason. So Jimmy Garoppolo, who is now the quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders, and also is a familiar face to Josh McDaniels, who he's played under this system many years back in his years in New England. So Jimmy Garoppolo, what's Jimmy Garoppolo like? Well, we already pretty much know what Jimmy Garoppolo is. We already know what's at stake. We know what his ceiling is at. A lot of people, a lot of fans, have a lot of mixed feelings about having Jimmy Garoppolo as the quarterback. So during the draft, of course, they knew that they were going to have to pick up on another quarterback, a young quarterback at least, that would hopefully be the future face of the franchise, and Jimmy Garoppolo being that placeholder until that quarterback is ready. And they were able to draft Aiden O'Connell in the 4th round in this year's draft. So Jimmy Garoppolo was signed in about March timeframe of this year during the offseason, and he signed with for 3 years, and the contract is for $67 million. So other acquisitions that the Raiders were able to pick up in the offseason were as follows: Jacoby Myers at wide receiver, so they signed him to a 3-year deal, $33 million here. And they were able to get back on Devontae Adams, which they have a big contract with at the moment. They have Hunter Henry back, but they also lost a couple of players during the offseason as well, which included 2 tight ends of Darren Waller, who was traded to then the New York Giants, which I think will be very productive in that Giant offense. And then they also lost Foster Moreau, who followed Derek Carr to the New Orleans Saints. So there are a couple pieces missing that were there last year of how competent this offense was for the Raiders. So they lost some of those pieces, but they were able to kind of pick up some additional pieces that would help Jimmy Garoppolo out and even help out Josh McDaniels as a whole. So Josh McDaniels, as a longtime play caller for the New England Patriots, picked up on a bunch of different Patriot players that were former, which were obviously Jimmy Garoppolo, Jacoby Myers, Brian Hoyer was one who is going to be Garoppolo's backup right now. At least he'll be second string, and they also picked up on a couple of other players as well too during that offseason. So there is a lot of Patriots blood within this Raiders organization and for this team and the roster right now. So, obviously a lot of people have a lot of questions about Jimmy Garoppolo. How is he going to conduct this offense to be the way of how we know it can be? So we already are familiar with Jimmy Garoppolo. We already know how he played in San Francisco, and we know how successful he can be. So just kind of pulling up his stats here as far as what it looks like right now. So right now we know exactly where Jimmy Garoppolo's stats are. So we understand that they're probably not the most glorifying stats that we've probably ever seen. But when you watch him play, when you've seen him play against with the 49ers for the last 5-6 years, we know how successful he can really be when healthy. So we know there's a lot of injury risks here. We understand that he's not always the most healthiest player on the field, but when he is healthy, we understand that he is able to win you a lot of games. So his career record of how many games he has won so far in his NFL career, he's won at least 53. He was 53-21 in his overall NFL career so far. So last season, when you're taking a look at the stats right here, his touchdown to interception ratio was 16-4, and his QBR was 103 points, which looks pretty solid and probably would have been maybe a little bit better. However, injury hovered over him last year, so that foot injury really hurt him and preventing him from being more productive and involved into the 49ers. So, that's the biggest part of them all, really, as far as that goes. So his stats look, decent. They look decent, at least. They look like he knows exactly what he's doing. It looks like that he's won a lot of games. He's been in a lot of different situations, and he understands how the game is being played. And I think having that familiar face of Josh McDaniels, who was his former play caller in New England, and he's also had some playing time under Bill Belichick and whatnot there. He's been to the Super Bowl before. He's had experience there. He's been to the playoffs multiple times before. So we know what his ceiling is like. So we know that Jimmy Garoppolo wins a lot of games, and we understand that he can be, conservative, probably not the prettiest passer in the league, probably not someone that's going to be a deep threat down the field, probably someone that's not going to scare you in terms of throwing the ball deep. But you don't really need that kind of stuff, especially if you're trying to mentor a young quarterback that you got in the draft from this year. So I think if he stays healthy, this could be a very productive offense. And when you're looking at the offense, you're looking from running backs to tight ends, and you're looking for offensive line and wide receivers. Like, you've got a lot of talent on there, guys. I mean, Devontae Adams is returning for another season. You've got him, who is the best receiver on this team and probably arguably one of the best receivers in the NFL. You also have Hunter Renfrow that's still going to be there. Jacoby Myers, who's good in the slot position there. You're going to be missing you're going to be missing some pieces at tight end, probably not at the same level as Foster Moreau or Darren Waller were at, but you also acquired Austin Hooper, OJ Howard. You also drafted Michael Mayer. So some of these players here could also potentially make a big step up to the plate this season, especially with Michael Mayer, who was drafted, who's going to have a lot of success in the near future with this team. I think, at least, as long as the organization continues to be competent and picking up the right players to help this team continue to grow. So there's a lot of mix in there too. And when you take a look at their offensive line, so their offensive line is probably something that probably has struggled for the last couple of seasons. Last year was probably one of the best offensive line seasons that we have seen in quite some time. So this year, I think the offensive line is even going to be sneaky good. I think they're going to be even better when they picked up some new players along the way as well. So they picked up players like Justin Murray, Greg Van Roten, and Dalton Wagner, and McClendon Curtis was another one too. So those are a bunch of new players that will be predicted to pick up, some playing time within this year as well, starting on the line. And then you also have some returning players as well. And one of the biggest ones here, you've got Alex Bars that's returning, Jermaine Ellen Muner. You've got some of those players returning back, and you have Colton Miller. So you do have a lot of experience in. So you do have some of your starters that are going to be right there are going to be Colton Miller, probably going to be one of your starters, and Jermaine Eulamayer that are going to be playing at guard. You got Alex Bars and Dylan Parham, and then you have Andre James at the center too, which is a solid center right there. So your offensive line is already looking pretty good, and hopefully will protect Jimmy Garoppolo. So offensive line solid. You have nice receivers: Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, Jacoby Myers. You got it right there too. Tight ends like Austin Hooper, who probably is not the same like he used to be, but still can be productive, can still put up some numbers as well and help out in the passing game and the receiving end of things as well. Michael Mayer, who will probably get some playing time too, especially if they play in that the two tight end offense scheme that McDaniels likes to cover. So that's definitely one right there too. Now let's take a look at their defense and talk about what their defense looks like right now. So obviously their defensive line, I think, is probably going to be even better than what they were last year. Last year, their defense as a whole was very underwhelming, meaning that they weren't exactly very good on defense whatsoever, especially at secondary. While I don't think their secondary really has improved all that much, their linebacker and their defensive line positions are actually pretty underrated. You take a look at who they drafted in the first round in Tyree Wilson, who is a defensive end and will probably play a lot of times at the edge position on defense. That's going to be something really cool to really see. You get Max Crosby back, you get Chandler Jones back. Chandler Jones was a bit of a disappointment last year, didn't really perform and very underwhelmed last year. But I think a year out and having McDaniels and trying to play under that scheme and understanding what that's looking like and everything, maybe this could be a better year for the defense in that respect of linebackers and defensive line. So you got Max Crosby back, Chandler Jones. You also got Tyree Wilson, who probably will be playing quite a bit of the games this year, especially playing on the other side of the edge rusher position where Max Crosby normally would. So I think their pass rush is fine. I think their defensive line is fine. I think their linebacker position is fine. So I don't think there really is a whole lot of holes there. Maybe in terms of like the center, maybe like in the interior defensive line could probably use some work, but their edge rushers and putting the pressure on to the opposing quarterback, I don't see any problems going on with that too much. So corners, secondary players, there are definitely a lot of questions in terms of that as well. So when you take a look at who they drafted in the offseason, so they did draft quite a bit of defensive players, which was definitely important that they did. Obviously, they got a defensive tackle of Byron Young. They also picked up a corner of Chakorian Bennett too, and that was in the 4th round. So we'll kind of see how he really evolves into the defense this year, which probably could be pretty good. Could be hot or cold. We're not really sure yet. He's coming out of Maryland. He's the 4th round pick. So a lot of questions kind of revolve around that. So there's still some problems within the cornerback and the free safeties position, which was something that was a huge struggle for them last season. Christopher Smith, the second, who was coming out of Georgia, which a lot of players were drafted out of Georgia this year from all over the league. 5th round pick right there too. We'll see if he gets some playing time as well and see how that goes. And then you got another young linebacker who will learn from Max Crosby and Chandler Jones and the veterans of Amari Burney. So there's a lot of things about the Raiders to really be excited about that I don't think a lot of teams really think about. I don't think a lot of people or the media really think that this is a good team overall, nor do they really think that they're going to be anywhere special this year. And they're probably even thinking that they're probably not going to be a playoff team. So if you kind of just take a look at their schedule right here, let's just take a look at their schedule. I'm not going to like analyze it game by game like I did already because I already did that. But they're also subject to change, just so everybody is aware of that. So if you take a look at their schedule and what their schedule is like, honestly, guys, this schedule really isn't all that bad, especially for a team that's not quite rebuilding, but a team that's still trying to have, like, I guess you could say, like, not so much an identity crisis, really, because I think there's other teams that are like that. They're not exactly a dumpster fire, but they're a team that could potentially upset you in any given way, but a lot of the questions revolve around the defense. So you take a look at the schedule here. There are some games that are pretty winnable for them, like the Broncos and the Steelers. The Bills, I don't see them winning. They'll split. They'll split with the Broncos. They'll split with the Chargers, like they do every year. The Packers is a winnable game. The Patriots is a winnable game, but I think the Patriots win that one. The Bears are a winnable game for them. Giants and Jets are one of them too. The Dolphins could also be a team that they could potentially upset. The Vikings, the Colts. So there are a lot of teams. You take a look at these teams that they're playing this year. So the overall schedule for the Raiders really isn't all that bad. This is actually a pretty nice schedule for a team to get acclimated with, be able to figure out, and be able to see like where they're looking at as of right now. So I think there are a lot of winnable games here that they could win, but there are also some teams that they're also going to get beat out by, like the Bills, for example. The Bills, the Patriots are one of them. The Steelers, they could definitely lose to. I can definitely see that being the case. The Chiefs are going to be one of their hardest ones as well, twice, and they got to play them twice. The Chargers will be a tough game. The Dolphins will be a tough game for them. So there are a lot of tough games for the Raiders. So I don't want to make it seem like that they have the easiest schedule in the NFL, but they're also this is a team that also could beat a lot of these teams in here too, especially when you're talking about the divisional teams like the Broncos, the Chargers, the Chiefs, who they usually give them a good run for their money for. So you look at that schedule, you say to yourself, hey, you know what? Maybe this is a team that could potentially win anywhere between 7 to 9 to 10 games, maybe. So I think that's very realistic. I think you can make that argument that they could push to 10 wins, but I don't think that's exactly going to happen. I think if their highest ceiling is going to be 9, I think it would stay at 9 and not go anywhere higher than that, just because I have a lot of questions about the defense. And I think their offense is going to play out with a lot of teams. I think they can keep up with a lot of tough teams as well. Even though if Jimmy Garoppolo isn't a Justin Herbert or Patrick Mahomes, definitely no Patrick Mahomes, and he's not a Russell Wilson. So Jimmy Garoppolo is the outlier from those 3 particular quarterbacks. However, the team that he does play on I would argue, would probably be better than the Broncos, to be quite honest with you, on offense. So I think looking forward to the season and looking to see what they have on paper right now versus the teams that they play during the season, picking up on free agency and looking everything overall of how this team is going to be. This could be a much better Josh McDaniels run team. Last year was again a dumpster fire that many people did not like to see. A lot of people complained, a lot of people wanted him fired and gone already, but let's kind of just think about it this way, okay? He was one of the best, if not the best play caller that New England has ever had before. So you cannot deny that this guy knows offense. Head coaching position, you can make a legitimate argument that he hasn't really won the big games and he hasn't really proven anything that he could be the head coach of this league. So after last year, after what we've seen in Denver before, and his head coaching days there too, which was, I believe, it was only a year that he was a head coach for the Broncos. But I think he's older now. I think he's got a lot of experience with offense. I think he's got a lot of good players on this team as well that has played for him before. And a lot of his Patriot players have had a lot of high remarks and respects to say about this guy before. I think he's going to have a better year. I think this year will be a much better year, much more organized year. I think it will be run pretty similar to what we have seen with the Patriots before, because you have a lot of Patriots blood on this team. And I think they're going to get themselves a lot more organized than what they were last year. Last year was a disaster. Derek Carr, as much as I love Derek Carr last year was not the answer for them going into the new year. So they had to make that decision, and they did. They released him, and now hopefully Carr will be successful with the Saints. I think he will be. I think he's in a better situation than he was in Las Vegas. So we'll see how this really does pan out for McDaniels. We'll see how this pans out for Garoppolo. We'll see how this pans out for the most important one of them all, Mark Davis, the owner of the Raiders overall. We'll see how this really pans out for this team this year. We'll see how they really do. I think they'll be successful, but I also think there are also some questions that you'll also have to keep at the back of your mind too. So let me know in the comments down below what you guys think about the Raiders and how successful do you think they're going to be this year. This is your boy JP Football Fanatic saying thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you all next time. Peace.